Welcome to Almost Pro, the podcast where we shine a light on the athletes whose stories go beyond the scoreboard and the experts that guided them. I'm Frances, here with my co host Laura, and today we're talking about what it really takes to succeed in sport. When we talk about success in sport, we often default to one word: professional. But is turning pro the only marker of success? And what does professional even mean across different sports and different countries? Considering these things raises a big question. What actually gets an athlete to the top? Laura has 6 pillars she says are essential, and I'm keen to unpack these with you today. Laura, from the top, we started a podcast. We called it Almost Pro. What does that even mean?
That is the ultimate question. That is a great question. What is being a pro? What is being an almost pro? Um, I think broadly it has to be a measure of success, right?
Yeah.
And in every sport across every different country, I think there's going to be different what
Mm.
qualifies as
Oh,
being a pro. What are your thoughts?
I think I'll always go to what is the traditional definition
Hmm.
and then work backwards, right? So
Yeah.
traditional definition of professional has a financial context. It's about the ability to earn a living from sport.
Right.
And I
But
think,
is there a dollar figure to that then
yeah,
qualifies you as a professional?
yeah, you can go to multiple sources and some will say, it needs to contribute 50% of your living expenses or your salary. And that would deem you professional. I actually think the reason you and I got talking about this and now find ourselves sitting here recording about this very topic is because professional has this giant disclaimer underneath it that says it depends. It
Yeah.
depends where you live. It depends what sport you play because you can go only in recent history and the Olympics didn't allow professional athletes. It was an
Yeah,
amateur competition,
exactly.
right? So there's layers and layers to the definition of professional. I think for plenty of years now, people have been trying to better define what professional means. Because if I'm playing a sport in my country that has limited exposure, limited sponsorship, limited funding, I'm going to be paid a limited amount at best.
Mm,
That same sport in another part of the world may actually be very well funded. And we talked about kind of the contrast between American football. If you live in Australia, where I am, or in the US, where you are, the pathways are different, the opportunities are different, and therefore the status of being at the top of your game results in really, really different monetary outputs,
yeah. Yet
right?
we continue to use this umbrella term of
Yeah,
pro across,
yeah,
all of them. It's fascinating, and that is such a good point. We could talk about even the minor leagues of hockey over here in the US. A lot of those teams are considered professional, even though they're not on the top tier league, but
yeah,
they're being paid, and
yeah,
they're being paid 50% or more, of their overall income. So
yeah.
it's a really fascinating topic. I think what is particularly fascinating is you raised a good point with the Olympics, and that some of those athletes might have won gold at the Olympics, but they might not even be paid enough of a livable wage for having won gold.
Yeah,
So to me, they're a household name. That's professional. They've just proven their worth
yeah,
worldwide.
yeah,
But do they qualify as pro?
yeah, right. And
Or are
then
they almost pro?
correct. But then what is almost pro? What is almost pro? Is that semi pro? Is that, is it as clearly defined as your amateur if you're not professional? Because you can be at the top of an individual's game. You can be at the top of gymnastics, you can be at the top of swimming, you can be at the top of athletics, and we would still consider you to be almost pro in the context of our podcast on the basis that in your sport, your ability to convert to professional in its traditional definition is pretty slim.
Yes. I think one of the beautiful things about almost pro is that we can be flexible and are flexible in the understanding of what does make a professional athlete.
Mm,
And I think one of the beautiful things of being a professional athlete competing on the top tier and having that pay package that reflects that top tier as well is that you are often given a spotlight. You are often given a platform to be able to share your journey and share your story. And where Almost Pro comes in is we have this great platform now that allows people who, like the gold medalists at the Olympics, who might not have had that commercial backing, who might not have had the pay package to support their achievement and therefore the platform to share their story. This is their space.
Yeah.
This is the space for everyone. You know, we say the 99%, but this is the space for everyone that has tried to achieve that professional or top tier
Mm,
status
mm.
in their sport that didn't receive the pay package or the spotlight to be able to share their story, that
Yeah.
commercial backing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Mm. And the
yeah,
risk of commerciality is that there are loads of people in loads of sports who will never reach the definition, the traditional definition of being professional, wherein
right.
you are financially compensated such that you're not needing to work other jobs.
Yeah, even though they're competing and
Correct.
playing at the absolute highest levels. You know, we're
Yeah.
just seeing this now with women's sport, aren't we? You know,
Yeah.
we're just now starting to break away where there's a lot of women's sports that, you know, okay, now is the time we start negotiating
Yeah.
salary.
Yeah.
Now is the time we start negotiating, can we have a platform? Can we have this commercial backing and these
Yeah. And I
points?
think I
Yeah.
think it raises two really valid streams of importance, right? One is the pathway for athletes in individual sports versus the pathway for athletes in commercially supported team sports. So if
Yeah.
I'm a swimmer in any country, you pick any, but for the most part, those individual sports, athletics, swimming, gymnastics, they are almost always finding it difficult to reach this traditional definition of professional, not
Yeah.
because they're not the best of the best, but because the sport and the pathways result in limited commercial product, limited
Yeah.
commercial out, limited commercial supports versus the multitude of leagues in different sports. You call football round ball football, soccer in some parts of the world, but you call on that sport in different parts of Europe. You're not playing necessarily at the very top before you're considered professional. You're playing
Mm.
in other leagues, being paid reasonably well, in some cases very well, and you are deemed professional. So the contradiction from one sport to another, from one geographic location to another, is so great that I think to try and define almost pro without first considering what is pro was kind of, uh, we were saying professional is defined by capacity to commercially capitalize, to be in a position where you're contracted and you're earning money for it. And almost pro is the rest. And
Yes.
the truth is, it shouldn't be seen as a term that lessens or makes less of the value that a person held in their sport, because the top of gymnastics is still the top of gymnastics, even if you're not commercially recognized.
Absolutely.
But what if we look at the opposite and the way that the world has allowed this shift now in our access to social media, our access to people through technology, where amateurs are making money.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard this recently, haven't we? We discussed how certain gymnasts, they're sort of setting themselves up almost as influencers
Yeah,
so that they're able to make a living, you
yeah,
know, while they get to do what they love doing and
yeah,
finding
yeah.
other avenues to have this funding.
I reckon the global movement towards docuseries in sport, I reckon it's opened this whole new door of financial support that athletes hadn't previously had.
Yeah.
And I wonder how much of that gets to the athletes. But I think
Yeah.
what it does is it it makes them part of our home. We're watching their day-to-day life. We're watching football players feeding their children in parts of certain series. And so we're meeting their families in some
Yeah.
sense. And so I think that converts to us then wanting to know more about them, stay connected with them. And so we do become part of their following. I think we're giving avenues to sports people now that they have never had before, whether they like it or not. We want more.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's almost like a reality, star now.
Yeah,
You're turning
yeah,
the athlete from being just on the field to being, a reality star.
in our
And I think
house.
the US in particular does that so well. And you
Yeah.
see that reflected in the types of salaries that players are receiving, across the NBA, so the basketball over here, or the NFL, the American football, and compared to other countries. There's a
Mm,
lot of work I think that needs to be done in commercialization across sports in other countries, Australia being one of them.
mm,
But I think where the US really stands out in this area, but only so saying only across certain sports. There's so much money going into players, but there's so much more commercialization in those particular sports. If we
mm,
were
mm,
able to broaden that across other sports, and through the help of these docuseries, and through the help of these social media platforms, to disperse that money, those earnings, a little bit more broadly, I think that would be so helpful for so many sports and so many
mm.
athletes as a whole.
Were you saying that you were talking about NBA players as your example? Were you saying that being able to step into their world through social media, they've built their own brand and they're being paid, compensated for that in their contracts? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I think it's part and part. So I think there's the actual league itself over here for the NBA does a great job at uh, televising games,
Yeah.
uh, right down to how you interact with the app for those leagues. So it makes it very easy for people to access, easy for people to follow. Uh, and then on the other half of that is not only sponsorships from brands, but the players themselves being able to promote themselves as a brand that also provides them with another income stream. And I think where sports that aren't well funded or aren't well commercialized, that 50-50 split, it changes. So we look at gymnastics, and I think there's a much higher reliance on the athlete being able to promote themselves on social media, or find those sponsorships to be able to receive some form of funding or income.
Yeah, yeah. Do you reckon that's global?
I think it is global. I think every country has their sports that they focus on, which is one of the beautiful things about sport. You might want to be following field hockey in Germany and go, okay, I know I can catch a game over there, and you might not be able to get it so readily available in, say, the US.
Yeah,
But then, that same principle happens the other way around. You can get
yeah,
the NFL in the US, but you might not be able to catch that in Germany. And I think that's one of the great things about sport in general. But it would be good to see a little bit more of a consistency for player income across the world and across the various sports. And I know
yeah.
that's not our focus of today. It's very much professional, but it ties in, right? This notion
Entirely.
of, you know, that's what we're talking about is, okay, well, what makes them professional? If they
Yeah,
need to be earning 50% or more of their total salary to make them professional, then we've got to work to fix this somehow.
yeah,
But I think Almost Pro is a great way to give everybody a voice that is
yeah.
in these spaces that isn't receiving that compensation.
Totally agree. Totally agree. The way that you touch on the global context, I think, is a thread towards the pillars that you were talking to me about, the pillars for success, right? Because if I'm an
Absolutely.
NFL player in Australia, if I'm American footballer living in Australia, I'm going to have some fairly constrained positions. I'm going to have very limited opportunities, despite the fact that NFL is working very hard at the moment and their movement into Australia. And I'm not discounting that, but the harsh reality is, it's not one of Australia's top sports at this point in time. So,
No,
contrarily, if I'm an Australian rules footballer and I'm wanting to play that in the US, my opportunities there are pretty limited too.
absolutely. And now, time for a short break. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to join the Almost Pro community and stay up to date with the latest episodes and news. To find out more or to apply to be a guest, visit almostpropodcast.com today.
So talk to me about the pillars. So let's say one of them is location. Talk to me about the six pillars and potentially A seventh.
Yeah, so the 6 pillars are really the pillars that I believe are the pillars for athlete success. So we've spoken a little bit about location, as you mentioned, and we've spoken a little bit about finance as well, and the importance of being able to fund your sporting endeavors.
Mhm.
And in no particular order, I believe that the other 4 there are talent, determination, timing, and luck.
So
So
tell me them. So tell me the 6.
so we've got
Talent,
location,
location,
finance,
finance.
talent,
Yep,
determination,
yep,
timing, and
yep.
luck.
Okay, okay.
So let's start at the start. So, location being, let's say I'm growing up in Australia and I am playing rugby.
Mhm,
So, we know that rugby is a big sport in Australia, rugby
mhm,
league or rugby union. We've got the privilege of both. If we focus on, say, rugby league, there's quite a few pathways in rugby league for athletes to be able to achieve the professional stage or carry them through the sport. We're very fortunate in that regard, as opposed to, say, if we were trying to do rugby in maybe even the USA up until the last couple of years, where
mhm.
it's still fairly new. So, location, I think, plays a big part in the pillars for athlete success.
Totally agree. Well, you wouldn't wanna be pursuing ice sports living in the tropical parts of the world.
Definitely not. I'm probably not going to be doing that out in Darwin in
Arguably
Australia.
although Cool Runnings did set a precedence.
That's true. Yeah. I'm surprised. Did uptake in that sport really soar after that movie? It was a fantastic movie. I would
Such a
think
good
that.
movie.
We divert again, but
And
it
sorry,
was a really
come
solid
back.
movie. Yeah. Finance being the next pillar.
Yeah,
We have definitely spoken about the importance of finance, whether your parents need to be wealthy for you to be able to make it in the sport, whether
yeah.
you do. But I think finance plays such a big component on whether or not you're able to take opportunities as they arise.
Mm,
And then talent. Talent's got to play into it to some degree. And I know that the T word is a little bit dangerous to use in sport a lot of the time. But I really think, if you are passionate about a sport and you're going to strive for success, that there has to be some kind of element to talent, right?
mm.
Like you're not going to put yourself as um, a catcher if you lack the hand-eye coordination,
Yeah,
for example.
yeah,
So there
yeah.
has to be some kind of element of talent. But I
Yep.
also think that flows on nicely to the next pillar of determination.
Mhm.
We might have talent, but we also have to work at it and we have got to be determined. So how determined are you, I think, is another very big measure of your success, but not the whole picture.
It's, Nathan Ajindu's episode, right? Where he talked about being very talented with tennis, but very distracted as well. Yeah.
Yes, that is a perfect example,
Yeah.
definitely. And I think that, we see a lot of teenagers drop out of sports in those teenage years, and I think that's where the talent versus determination battle really comes into play in that kind of space.
When you
Ye
see the parents going, "Oh my goodness, I know my child can do it, but they're just not willing." That's when talent nation are at absolute loggerheads.
Exactly, yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
painful for everyone to witness, honestly, painful for them to go through and painful to watch on and think, "Oh, which way are they gonna go?" Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yep.
But that also flows on to the next pillar of timing, right?
Mhm.
So, timing can be everything, can't it?
Yeah.
Where, you've got, are the pathways available in my sport for me to achieve the level of athlete success that I want to achieve? Are
Mm.
they there now? Or are they there 10 years from now? Were they there and they're no longer there? Am I in, and that brings it back, am I in the best location, at this particular time? At this particular time, do I have the finances to support what I'm trying to do? At this
Yeah.
particular time, have I developed enough of my talent and my determination to carry me to that athlete success? And I
Yeah.
think timing can really, underpin everything.
I totally agree. I reckon timing's one of those classic ones that you can pull the others away and say, if I'm in the right location and I'm financially, positioned, I have the talent, I have the determination, luck's been on my side, but unfortunately, I'm on the wrong side of the Olympic cycle. Or
Exactly.
I've been scouted to a team that is just soaring, and I don't think that I'm gonna get a run here.
Yeah,
Because timing wise, this team wasn't where it is now. It wasn't there 3 years ago, but now's my draft, and I'm in, and they actually don't need me.
exactly.
And still all the other
Exactly.
things. I'm still determined, I'm still talented, all of the other things have lined up for me, but I reckon timing is that one that it just
Oh, it's
does.
such a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah, such a big one. You could be, uh, imagine having Novak Djokovic in tennis, Rafael Nadal, and Federer at your college in Div 1 college and
Yes.
thinking, "I've gotta pick a number 1."
Yeah.
In their peak. Let's take it back to their peak. How are you gonna pick, right? That's timing.
But
Who
even in
who is the number 1 person on the team this week
Right.
at the
But
moment?
even in their era of tennis, imagine being all of the other exceptional players
Yes.
who, from a timing perspective, have
Mm,
come through at a point in time, a point in history, when we've got 3 exceptional,
yeah.
exceptional tennis players, like next level of exceptional, and
Yep.
the 4th and 5th and 6th and 7th and right through to you pick a number are still phenomenal tennis players, but
Mhm.
from a timing perspective, their mark in history is marred by the moment that they turned up. They just happened to be in the Nadal, Federer, Djokovic era,
Exactly, and I think this
right?
really hits home at that last pillar, and you mentioned it before as well, of luck.
Mhm.
So timing and a little bit of luck. You know, it
I reckon luck's the most controversial.
I think it is, but
Me too.
I feel it's really valid. You could be, maybe I'm training for the, Olympic trials, and I'm a sprinter, and my PB is faster than everybody else on the
Mm,
track,
mm,
and I'm running, and I'm just about to cross the finish line, and I fall over and roll my ankle for no
mm.
reason other than just I was a little bit out of luck in that moment. And I think that's where it comes into play is,
It's a tough
okay.
one because
Yeah,
it's a tough one because from a society perspective, luck has been shunned for a long time as a dirty word that is, that has been replaced by hard work. So we say, I'm not lucky, I just work hard. Or, as people say, the harder I work, the luckier I get. I do think though, when you talk about sport, sometimes the misfortune of someone results in the luck of another. So if we talk
yeah,
about the you're talking about and the sprinter who does an ankle, their ankle injury actually plays into the hands of whoever was next on the card.
that's right, yeah,
That person gets a call up, and maybe we'll call it luck. Maybe this is one of the luck examples. They get the call up on the basis that that injury took place.
yeah.
And that for me highlights why I reckon there's a number 7.
Yeah, this is the ultimate debatable one, isn't it? Does it
I
have its own
reckon
pillar or
Yeah,
does it fall underneath a branch? And I think there's probably argument to be made for its own pillar.
yeah,
Um, the 7th one being health.
yeah. I reckon there's health. I reckon
Yeah,
there's and I reckon there's health because injury can be the beginning and the end, right? So as I said, someone else's injury can be the next person's beginning, but your own injury can often be the end of what
mm,
could have been your pro pursuit or the pursuit for success. I also think that modern era of sport is making way for mental health conversation. And I'm not sure that mental health, as opposed to physical injury, which we've become really, really familiar with in sport, I'm not sure it has a home in one of the other 6 pillars.
that's fair. Yeah. where does mental health fall? And it is such a big part of
Yeah,
success in every single sport to a certain degree.
yeah,
Every single sport relies on mental stability to some
correct.
degree.
Correct, and I reckon I shouldn't discount that many of those pillars may actually be contributing factors to declining mental health in sport.
Yeah.
So, the fact that you do need to be financially positioned in order to pursue sport at this level, and that in itself can be so taxing. You know, the
Mm.
toll athlete who says, "I've given everything, and the only thing stopping me is that I wasn't born into the family that was able to pay for these things." You know, I imagine that's tolling. But mental health more broadly is a condition that someone is dealing with that I don't think can just slot into something else. I
Yeah,
do think health is a pillar.
yeah. It's too big, isn't it? So,
Yeah.
as you mentioned, I think that was really, like, well worded the way that it is part of every single other pillar, but that
Yeah.
component, particularly the mental health component, does make it big enough for it to be its own pillar.
I reckon. I reckon it does, and I reckon, that's a nod to the bravery of athletes we're seeing in modern era sport who are speaking up and
Mm.
saying, you know, "Despite what you see of me on the mat, on the pitch, on the court, on the whatever, I've got some other stuff going on here, and all of my other 6 pillars have lined up brilliantly, but my
Yeah,
health is not quite there."
I think it's one of the pillars where we give room for it to be its own pillar now, but was it recognized as a valid pillar in the past?
Nope.
You know, it's yeah, that is that's the cold hard truth, isn't it? There was no room for that was an excuse. A little bit like luck was
Yeah.
often and can often now be, "Oh, I was out of luck. Oh, well, that's an excuse." You know,
Yeah.
I was just a little bit off today, mentally just really struggled to get my head in the game, get my head right. Oh, that's an excuse.
Mm,
And
mm.
so I think that we're in this really beautiful time where we're giving room for that now. We're
Yeah, yeah,
starting to
I
say,
agree.
okay, well, can athletes achieve more or better results or be healthier, overall healthier athletes and healthier
Mm,
people if we give
mm,
room for this?
mm,
So, yeah,
mm. And we're seeing more and more research that says yes. We're seeing more and
absolutely.
more, and also, as you and I have talked about in a number of discussions around personality types for high performers, that if we're not providing space and true conversation and then avenues for people to stay real with where they're at in their mental health journey, then type A's will continue to push.
Yeah,
And what we see is people leaving their sports with absolutely no desire to ever connect with it again
yeah,
because the burnout is so real, because the years and years of being brave and putting on the brave face, as many sports have asked for generations, takes its toll. It
mm,
costs, right? The Do you reckon any of those pillars are institutionally reliant? So that it depends the sport you're in, the country you're in, and therefore the system or institution you're attached to, that they have a sense of control over some of those pillars for you?
yeah. I do think so. I think probably two of the biggest ones are location and timing.
Yeah.
I think you can be the best at what you do in your sport, but if you
Mhm.
don't have the pathways in place in your
Mm,
location at that particular time, then again, finance there as well, or
mm,
the ability to travel to a place that does,
mm.
then that can be potentially what stops you from achieving your desired level of success.
Yeah, yeah. Or
Yeah.
you're part of a system that has a governed intake, as in
Mm,
only 8 of you can come through. Only
yeah.
4 of you can come through. The rest of you will self-fund, self-train, whatever else it is, but we're taking the top 4 or we're taking the top 8, and I reckon maybe we do call that luck or we do call that timing, or maybe you're just not the top 4 talent. But I do think sometimes there is a tendency to take the most malleable, to take those that we can kind of bend and stretch into the system, as opposed to those that are the most talented at the point in time.
Yeah, it's a bit of a house of cards, isn't it?
Yeah,
You really need everything in place and to
yeah,
hold for you to be able to
Yeah.
achieve that success. If it comes falling down, or even one of them does, one of those foundational pillars,
Yeah.
then it can just alter your trajectory. It can alter the outcome so
Yeah.
significantly.
Which ones do you reckon the player has control over?
I think the one that the player has sole control over is determination.
Yeah,
You
come
know,
on.
you can be struggling with every other pillar, and let's throw health in there, but determination, right? Determination to get yourself mentally strong enough, or to a
Mm.
place enough where you can perform at the level that you need to, or to work hard despite your location. And we see so many great success stories, and I'm sure on Almost Pro, we're going to hear so many stories where people were determined, but
Mm.
were in the wrong location.
Mm,
And
mm.
yeah, I think determination is the one that you are solely responsible for. And then on
Yeah.
the flip side of that, luck. No, I don't think we're really responsible for the luck. We can try and create our own luck, of course, but is that us being determined, or is that
Yeah.
actual luck?
Yeah, yeah. I agree. The determination I do think is within athlete control, but don't you think that tells its own story? That
Yeah.
that collectively we agree that one of 6, but possibly 7 pillars for athlete success is the one that they can put their hand on. Crazy system. It is a crazy system that billions of people connect with,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Definitely.
If we look at the way then that the pillars intersect with this whole definition of professional, do you think that all 7 of them need to be at full delivery for professional to be the outcome?
I think that is the preference. You know, if
Yeah.
they are, then sky's the limit, so to speak.
Do you reckon though when some this is not to stereotype, but when some people hit pro, they forget about the cadence of all of it, that all of it had lined up for them in a way that perhaps someone with similar talent, similar determination even, just didn't have those other pillars lined up. And then, I think, and I'll answer it myself and then give you a chance, but I think that quite often at professional, we lose sight of the luck layer, of the location layer, of the timing layer, and it just comes down to grit. We were determined and we were talented, and those things worked out for us.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I agree with you entirely. I think people do sometimes lose sight of that, and I think it's noticeable. If you're paying attention to it, I think that it is noticeable even from a fan and consumer perspective. You know, you see and hear athletes every now and then who have made uh, the top tier of their sport professional. They're earning money. They're living and doing their sport full time. And I so often hear, I was just determined. I just worked harder than everybody else. And I'm thinking, you're forgetting all of the factors, all of the other pillars that needed to be in place for you to achieve it. So, not to take away from their level of determination, because I think that's so admirable for
Yeah, it's a
anyone
pillar.
who's Yeah, absolutely. You're
Yeah.
striving for success in anything and you're determined. I think that's wonderful. That's great.
Mm,
But
mm,
let's not forget everything else that needed to be in place for you to be where you are today.
mm.
Because there's someone else out there that was equally as determined, that equally had as much talent, that equally had the finance, that equally had a lot of these things, but maybe luck wasn't on their side that day. Maybe they're the athlete that tripped and fell and hurt their ankle. And so you got in and they didn't. And so I think that it can be very easy to lose sight of what it takes.
I know we're doing it here with Almost Pro, but I think more broadly, the definition of success in sport needs to be less crude. It needs to be not just you were pro or you weren't, but I think as the world broadens its lens in the way that it pays for sport, as in docuseries, as in, the sign up for YouTube videos, the getting inside people's social media content, and what we haven't yet talked about, but this NIL, the name, image, likeness
Mm,
money that's presenting in colleges in the US, that is the product of us wanting more of people, right? Rather than the sport they play.
Yeah.
I do believe that there comes a time where the sport and the traditional context of sport needs to move with the timing of this era, of this generation, and the way they consume sport, and the way that they connect with sport, and the way that they idolize sports people. And I think the measure of success in sport needs to look different. We're doing our bit, but I think more broadly, pro can be a very, very hard and crude line of measuring success.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Um, I think that using the term professional as a barometer for success in every sport across every part of the world is too big. It's too broad. And I think to challenge that, the question we need to ask is, how does it then apply? So if I say to you, Laura, that I'm a minor league hockey player, am I pro? How would you answer that?
Yes,
Why?
because I'm receiving enough money to keep myself going. It's my own one and
Yeah.
only job.
Yeah. So if our only measure right now is what is globally recognized as the definition for professional, and that is that you're earning enough to not need to have other jobs, or
Mm.
at least to cover, in some definitions, 50% of of your living expense. But the anomaly here.
The hard thing is I guess technically I would say a minor league hockey player, no, because to me the NHL is the
I was about to
professional.
say,
Yeah, because to me, if I'm playing for the Solar Bears, then in the minor league, my dream is to go and play for the Tampa Bay Lightning, the professional team,
right?
or the
So
Boston Bruins.
so
Like,
but this is the anomaly. The anomaly is that if we allow the code, the sport, to
mm,
define professional, we're going to keep looking at professional going, well, it depends. Well, it depends,
mm,
right? But in truth, if we take the globally recognized definition of professional, then I would say to you that the minor league hockey player that's earning a reasonable living under a contract with a sports team is defined as professional, except for by their own institutions
mm,
who say they're not because they haven't reached the level of professional. And I think that links to, let's chat tennis. So if I'm ranked, I don't know, let's call it 300th.
yeah.
If I'm number 300 on the world tour and I'm playing on the circuit, but I'm barely breaking even, I'm barely making enough to cover my costs, am I still a pro?
I mean, yes and no, right? Like,
Agreed.
yes, but no financially
Yeah.
speaking. Yeah.
It's the definitions, right? If it's
Mm,
under the definition of what is defined as a professional, globally recognized, then no, you are not,
yeah.
because you can't sustain yourself. And in fact, what you're doing is not getting you through life
Mm,
financially. But as an institution, the institution of tennis has defined that a professional is someone who is welcomed, invited onto the circuit as a pro player. So this is where it gets so prickly. Because then
it
if
is
you
so
took
tricky.
to yeah, if you took it to another sport, the one that we talked about before, if I'm playing college sport and I'm making plenty of money through NIL, it seems pretty obvious to anyone that I'm not pro.
Mm,
But the reality is, if I'm making a living out of it, I'm making a living and substantial living out of playing that specific sport, it begs the question then that I meet the definition.
yeah.
So I think for you and I, the summary needs to be that we understand what almost pro is, right? It is a home for the athletes whose stories need telling. It is a home for all athletes who whose stories have not been the front page of newspapers and social media stories and the most trending search, but who have done exceptional things, often at elite levels, but haven't met the definition of, in that I'm being paid to do this at a rate that I can sustain myself.
Yeah, and a home for the athletes as well that have played only at the national or sort of international level, that haven't played on the world circuits and haven't made it into the minor leagues, but have strived for their professional career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I know that, you were talking about it as a comparison to what potentially other players are doing in,
Mm.
the pro level, but national's a big deal. National
Yeah,
is a big deal. So for an athlete in any country with any population number to be representing their country in the sport that they're playing, we think is a huge deal. You may not be labeled as a pro by doing that. You may go to the Olympics and still not be labeled as a pro, but we want to hear your story.
absolutely. Some of these achievements that these athletes make are incredible. I wanna hear about them. All of
Phenom-
them.
and oftentimes against the grain of the six pillars,
Yeah.
you know, where timing wasn't for them or luck wasn't for them or finance wasn't on their side or they weren't living in the right part of the or they moved to be
Mm.
in the right part of the world and left all of the other things behind. They're the stories, right? That's
Yeah.
the stuff that's the untold. And that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
I love
Absolutely.
it. I love it. I think what we can summarize from this conversation is the definition of professional continues to elude us, but we accept that there is a globally recognized definition for professional, and we accept that it is so frequently challenged by one code, one sport after another,
Yeah.
right? Laura, it would be remiss of us not to have had this or that segment in a
Absolutely.
recording of your life. We haven't done this for reals. We haven't done this for
Yeah.
reals in any way. So let's play. I'm going to go first.
Okay.
All right.
Let's do it.
Laura, welcome to this or that. It's so nice
Thank
to
you so
have you
much.
here.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, you're welcome.
Nice to be
You're
here.
welcome. All right. I would like you to choose between peaking too early in your career or peaking too late. She pauses,
That's
folks.
so tough. I'm gonna go peaking too early.
Yeah?
Yeah, the
Okay.
body's in better
You're gonna get it
condition.
right.
It's gonna bounce back a bit better, you know?
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
that's fair. This is meant to be rapid fire, so I'm not even gonna
Right,
ask,
yeah.
but here I am waiting for your response as to why I'm not supposed to ask you that. I'm supposed to know that, so I'm very, very sorry. All right, I'm gonna ask you one more and then you can have a turn. Missing selection this year but making it next year, or making it now and fading quickly?
No, let's wait. Let's make selection next year.
Yeah, I love it. Your turn.
Alright, alright. Winning ugly by chance or losing beautifully at your best?
This is so, so invasive because I'm gonna be so honest with you here, but an ugly win is still a win. The bit I didn't like is by chance. So I'm gonna
Mm.
have to say using beautifully at your best because the chance bit got me.
Alright, well, I'm gonna throw an earlier comment back on you here for the next one. Getting your break because someone else got injured or never getting a break at all?
Oh, again, you're not portraying me very well here, but I have to take a please, Laura, getting your break because someone else got injured. Oh,
Yeah, it's, pretty rough responses there. No
I
judgment slash bit of judgment. That's fine.
me into a corner. That is awful. All right, that's it. Natural ability that comes easy or a learned skill that you've built up over years?
Learned skill built over years. I wish it was always the other way. That would be so much easier, but yeah, I'm gonna go with the learned skill built over
Mm.
years. Yeah.
Okay. Um, extra training session or extra recovery session?
Extra training session.
She knew that. I knew you were gonna say that.
Yeah. Yeah. That
Okay, yeah.
determination's gotta get me through, you know? Alright, playing through injury or resting to recover?
Oh, the right answer is resting to recover. The truth is I played through too many injuries and I'm paying for it now.
Yeah, we've heard about all that sport tape. We
Yeah.
still don't have shares. We really need to get on that. Alright, mental resilience or physical resilience?
Mental resilience.
Okay, love
Do you know
that.
what? Because I once did a 100-kilometer walk and
Why?
the
Sorry, not the question.
Right. It was I wasn't, I had a car. I don't know. Anyway, it was a thing that I did. I willingly signed up for. And what the best advice I was given was that your body will walk the first 50 kilometers without flinching, but you'll need your mind to carry you for the last 50.
That's so true.
And it was
Yeah.
entirely true. It was
Yeah.
entirely true. There was nothing and I don't know whether it was entirely true because it had been so firmly ingrained in my brain, and I was like, "Okay, next 50, must lock in." But I believe mental resilience the whole way,
Yeah, that's a
the
good
whole
one.
way. Alright, um, big sponsorship deal or reliable match payments?
Reliable match payments. I think that stability is
Yeah,
mental relief in itself.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that probably answers the next one, but if you could get prize money today or a long-term contract, what would you take?
There's a few events on at the moment. So no, I'm kidding. I would take the long term contract.
I love it. Alright, over to you.
Okay, I'm gonna go location based. So let's
Okay.
go hometown loyalty or chasing the global stage.
This could be the problem with why sport didn't turn me into a superstar. Her hometown all the way.
I feel like I might know the answer to your next one, but being a big fish in a small pond or a small fish in a big pond?
Small fish, big pond. Yeah, all the time. There's so much you can learn from the other
Yeah.
fish. Well, that was fun. Thanks everyone for joining us as we pulled apart what success really means in sport. Next time you hear the word pro, remember it's just one version of success, and it's often not the full story.
And to everyone listening from home, the gym, or on the go, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow and subscribe to stay on the Almost Pro journey. And if you've got a story to share or know someone who does, we would love to hear from you. Head over to almostpropodcast.com or our social media pages at Almost Pro Podcast to get in touch. Thanks for joining us on the Almost Pro Sport Podcast. Today, we introduced the 7 pillars of athlete success framework developed by Laura and Francis. These being location, finance, talent, determination, timing, luck, and health. For today's question from the grandstand, if you could max out just one pillar, which would you choose and why? Let us know in the comments below.